I want to talk to you about all the mistakes I've made with writing. And I know that these top 5 videos are way overdone, but hopefully this one can be useful and help you avoid making some of the mistakes that I've made, whether you're brand new to writing or you've been around the block a bit. Either that, or you can just point and laugh at all the stupid stuff I've done. Whatever the case, I'll leave that up to you. Let's get started. By the way, I don't believe I'm the perfect writer or that I've necessarily beaten all of these mistakes. These are just the mistakes that I know about. That is a little bit worrying. I'm also going to keep this mostly approach-based, rather than getting bogged down in specific mistakes in grammar and technique and that kind of thing. I want to think a bit wider, but I'm sure it's still going to be really useful to you. So, my top 5 writing mistakes. Let's go backwards. What's number 5? Writing the wrong thing. If you've seen some of my previous videos, you might have heard me talking about how I spent 7 years writing novel after novel. I did that for 3 reasons. I wanted to get published, I wanted to get better at writing, and I wanted to establish a career for myself in writing. And I don't necessarily regret doing that, because I did get better at writing, but it just wasn't the best way to do any of that. I really love writing flash fiction and short stories and novellas as well, but I didn't write any of that during that 7-year period because I was convinced that none of that stuff would be as useful to me as having a novel under my belt. Nobody buys short stories, I thought to myself. Nobody buys crappy novels either, Kieran, that's what I should have said. I thought that writing novels and writing stories were 2 different paths, one of which would lead me to income and a career in writing, and the other would just lead me to my own fun and enjoyment. And I treated those 2 elements as separate things, and that was a mistake. I should have been prioritising having a good time with my writing, because without that, motivation goes out the window, and that push to be better starts coming from a negative place, not a positive one. If you're not having fun, writing becomes solely work, and that's not going to be enjoyable. A balance of those 2 things would probably have been my best approach. I could still have written novels, but every time I wanted a break, I should have written a short story or a piece of flash fiction or something like that. That way, the 2 sides could have complemented each other. If I'd done that, I could have compounded the experience that I was gaining and improved a lot faster while also having a better time. But impatience got the better of me, and I was too focused on getting there fast, wherever there was, than getting there happy. That's why I'll always recommend writing what you enjoy writing, because doing that brings this endless source of energy to what is a difficult task, even if you love it. You'll always learn something from whatever you write. That's why it makes sense to write something that you really enjoy writing, even if at the same time you need to grind away on something else that might help you get where you're going. Having said that, you can't just repeat the exact same thing over and over again and expect to make progress. That's a mistake. In fact, I'll bring the title thing down, that'll be the next mistake. Repeating the same approach and expecting different results. Yes, this is something I've done, no doubt about it. I enjoy trying different approaches to writing, but the one I always fall back on for me is discovery writing, or like a 90-10 split of discovery and planning. But that approach, when it comes to novels, hasn't always worked out that well for me. Even after my first novel, I probably knew that. I probably knew I needed to give it a little bit more in terms of planning, but I just went into the second book anyway, and it still didn't go very well. Not my finest work. And it was pretty much directly because I didn't plan it well. But I didn't stop there. Novels 3, 4 and 5, I also wrote mostly without planning. I was getting a little bit better, but still wasn't really planning, and they didn't really go that well either. I think some part of me just thought I needed more practice. I didn't stop to analyse my approach and figure out what was and wasn't working for me. I just kept doing the thing that I knew I could do over and over again, and so I sort of got bound to it, imprisoned by my own laziness. I kept the same approach and expected different results, and I wasn't being honest with myself. There was another part of my approach that I was just repeating over and over again during this time, something that was obviously a clear error. A crime against writing. It was a lazy, avoidable mistake that I made over and over again, all the while hoping that things would magically fix themselves if I just kept going. And what was that mistake? Not editing stuff. I didn't edit those novels. I barely even read over them before I either started querying them with literary agents, wouldn't recommend, don't do it, or I just abandoned them, sometimes at the end of the novel and sometimes right in the middle of it. By moving on to the next book without editing anything at all, I was labouring under the delusion that I was learning everything I needed to know about writing just by writing stuff and finishing it. And of course, by not editing, I was missing every opportunity I had to make the stuff that I was weak at or I wasn't good at better. So none of it did get better. Well, that's not strictly true, actually. I did get better at writing, but I think it would have made way more sense to me to take some time to build my editing skills. I could have recognised that that very thing that I didn't really want to do very much was exactly what I needed to do the most. Imagine taking your biggest writing weakness or your biggest flaw and instead turning that into a strength. You'd be unstoppable. That's not what I did. I just avoided editing entirely. If there's something you're avoiding with writing and instead you're just sticking to what you know time and time again, try and break that pattern, because doing the scariest thing will bring you the best results and the quickest improvement. That said, if you're repeating errors a bit, at least you're still writing and at least you're still making some progress, which is better than making the next mistake I made. Sitting on finished work and not doing anything with it. I'm talking absolutely nothing. If I wasn't happy with a novel that I'd finished, but I was clearly unwilling to edit it, then it led me to just grind to a halt. I'm sitting on quite a few finished drafts now that will never see the light of day just because I lost momentum and I ultimately stopped caring about them. If after the first draft was finished, I'd taken a couple of weeks to refresh myself and written something else for a while, and then I'd come back to read it while I still remembered everything that I thought made it special and worth writing in the first place, I could have made something of it. Instead, I just sat on them. Closed the document, that was that. I'm not sure what I was expecting to happen really. Was some kind of magical force supposed to open these documents and edit them for me? Or was I supposed to have some kind of epiphany based on making no effort whatsoever that would give me the momentum to open them and edit them myself? No, it was just hard, so I didn't do it. Now I feel like it's too late. I've forgotten all of my trains of thought, all of those connections between the characters and the plot and the themes, all of that stuff's gone and forgotten. I've forgotten why I wrote the novels in the first place. And I'm sure a lot of writers don't end up doing anything with their first few novels. I'm sure that's not uncommon at all. But the mistake I made, I think, was just not making any effort whatsoever. There's more to writing than just finishing first drafts. Editing is writing, revising is writing, figuring out a synopsis is writing, learning how to pitch a book is writing. But because I just threw my books in the back of a metaphorical cupboard somewhere, I never gave myself a chance to learn any of those skills. I think I was just overwhelmed by everything that I didn't know. Still am, to be honest. And that's another mistake I've made more recently, and one I see other writers making too. I made a video about this particular mistake a little while ago. I'll link it up there as usual. This one's kind of the opposite of the last one. It's making too much effort. Actually, there's probably no such thing as making too much effort when it comes to writing. What I really mean is making too much effort in the wrong places, focusing too much time and energy on things that are either totally beyond your control or just not useful to you. I'm talking about analysis paralysis. Expected something to happen there, never mind, looks like it's not going to happen. Analysis paralysis. Self-referential jokes. If you're confused about what just happened, that's understandable. The video I talked about will explain everything. What analysis paralysis is a kind of writing phenomenon, something that's happened to me fairly recently. One or two of you might know that I tried writing a novel on 2 separate occasions in 2020 and I just couldn't get anything to stick. 2 completely separate novel ideas and neither of them worked, and I think that was mainly down to analysis paralysis. Like I said before, not planning was my big problem with novels, and it's the reason why I'm not so fond of any of the previous novels that I've written. So in 2020, in full possession of that realisation, I set about the task of writing a new novel. On 2 occasions. This time I tried to plan ahead. I tried to think in terms of character arcs into the future, the plot, what was going to happen. I tried to stay on course and always ask myself the question, what's going to happen next, and does that make sense? I was so concerned with avoiding writing another meandering, semi-plotless kind of book that I just tensed up and ended up just analysing what few chapters I'd already managed to write. The balance was totally off. I was too concerned with how good a job I was doing, and I forgot all about the fun of writing and discovering a story. My point is, of course, take writing advice, by all means. I'd be a bit of a fool if I didn't recommend taking writing advice considering the nature of this channel, but like all good things, take advice in moderation. Don't try to learn everything that's possible to learn, meanwhile having no fun whatsoever with writing. Balance the two, if you can. That's what I'm trying to do at the moment. I'm writing a backwards novella of flash fiction because it's hard to write, and I think I'll learn from it, but it's also just fun as heck. Do people still say heck? Well, I don't want to look like an idiot. Lastly, a bonus mistake that I made. Bonus mistake does not sound right at all. If you've been around my channel for a while, no doubt you will have heard me say this before, but my biggest mistake with writing is not speaking to other writers about writing. At all. I'm not saying you have to go out and join a face-to-face writers group. That's scary and impractical, even when there isn't a global pandemic. I just mean, get on Twitter and talk to someone about their writing or your writing, or join the NaNoWriMo forum and talk to the people near you or the people that write the same stuff as you. Or you can join the writing community that I'm building on my Discord server. It's full of really nice people talking about writing. The link's in the description down below, and if you just want to join and lurk, that's fine. That counts. Nobody minds. Whether you do join the Discord server or you just start shouting about your own writing from your front door into the darkness of the night, probably wouldn't recommend that. I would encourage you to talk to writers at least in some capacity. It has endless benefits and very few drawbacks. Become a part of some kind of writing community, because honestly, not doing that sooner is one of my biggest regrets when it comes to writing. So pick a community. If it's this one, that's great. We'd love to have you. If not, just make sure you find someone to talk to about writing. If you want to know a bit more about my writing and my flash fiction course and that kind of stuff, head to my website, links in the description. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy writing.